We now have 5G cellular on AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, all active at the same time, plus Starlink, all bonded together for an ultimate mobile internet connection. We're going to cover the hardware, the installation, some data plans, and some tips. Let's get into it. Per usual, this is a how we did it video, and this is about our setup and our system, which is completely overkill for 99% of the people out there. We realize that, but we do want to use it to test and show you guys some new technology. We will be covering some more normal level solutions, and I'll have some recommendations near the end of the video, so be sure to stay till the end for that. If you've watched us for a while, you know we only like to show and recommend products that we have used over time and tested thoroughly. We're not going to just fire up some new little gadget and say, hey, everybody get this. We've been using Peplink gear for a few years now, and we really like this stuff, and we're really excited about sharing some of this new stuff with you. This could potentially be a longer video, so we will have chapter markers down below to each section. So if you want to skip to that section or use it to go back and rewatch a section, you can find those chapters in the timeline down below. You can also find them in the description down below on YouTube. And at the bottom of the description, there's even a cool little timeline with thumbnails. That's pretty cool. In our last 3 internet videos, I spent some time going over kind of a broad overview of mobile internet technology, terminology, and all that good stuff. I'm skipping that this time for speed, and also because I've done it 3 times. I'll have links to those video segments down below. Additionally, if this goes way over your head, I still highly recommend the Mobile Internet Resource Center. They have a ton of resources there and a lot of great content. Additionally, they have a mobile internet video course that will take you from the ground up and give you a good baseline, a good foundation of knowledge to build on. So if some of the stuff in the video goes over your head, I highly recommend them. Not affiliated anyway, I will have a link down below. The one thing from my overview though, however, that I don't want to skip and I do want to share with you guys, and it's the reason we have all these crazy connections, is diversity is key when it comes to running mobile internet on the road. You're going to go to places where there's no AT&T, there's no Verizon, no T-Mobile. You're going to go to places that are under trees, there's no Starlink. So having multiple connections is key, and multiple options is key with mobile internet on the road. So let's go ahead and jump into the new hardware that we have up here in this tech cabinet in our Internet 4.0. Now, I want to reiterate that this is overkill. We put all this stuff together and push the limit so that we can test things out for you. And also just because I'm kind of a tech nerd and I enjoy this kind of stuff and seeing how many active connections I can put together in a SpeedFusion bundle. But also going over the technologies and some of the specifications on this hardware is going to serve us at the end when I have some recommendations for some more normal sort of setups. First up is the Peplink MAX BR1 Pro Dual 5G. It's a really long title. Peplink likes these long titles. We're just going to refer to it as the BR2 going forward. Its key features are it has 2 Cat20, aka 5G cellular modems built into it. So it can have 2 simultaneous 5G connections right out of the gate from hardware built into it. It also has 3 WAN ports, meaning ports that you can connect to get to other internet sources. 2 of those WAN ports are Ethernet, and they're perfect for things like connecting to Starlink or maybe a cable router or thing if you're at a seasonal site. The other one is a USB WAN port that you can use to things like a Peplink MAX adapter that can add another cellular modem to the mix, or any other future technology they come out with for expandability. It has 4 Ethernet LAN ports, and it also has Wi-Fi 6 for serving the connectivity inside the RV. We partnered with Peplink directly on this particular piece of hardware, so thank you to Peplink for setting that out for our evaluation. Also, on the rest of the gear that's Peplink, we partnered with Mobile Must Have, so thank you to both of them. They've been great partners in this. Since we're talking about the BR1 Pro, it is connected to a 11-in-1 antenna. It's called the Parsec Great Pyrenees. Parsec likes to come up with names for their antennas, which is cool. So we've got the Great Pyrenees on the roof. It's an 11-in-1 antenna. Those 11 connections are 8 cellular. So you got 2 4x4 MIMO for 2 different 5G cellular connections. It also has 2 Wi-Fi connections, 2 Wi-Fi antennas, and a GPS antenna. So the 11 connections you'll see on top of the BR1 Pro here go to that connection on the roof. Also in the mix up here is the Peplink BR1 Pro 5G. Now we had this in our last setup, so this is just being moved over, but it does have a single Cat20 5G cellular modem built into it. It also has one WAN Ethernet port, so not quite as expandable as the BR2, but does have some expandability there and the ability to connect to something like a Starlink. It has one LAN Ethernet port for connecting to your things inside, and it does also, of course, for things inside, have Wi-Fi 6 built in. You're going to see that we actually have this BR1 Pro wired in directly to our BR2 through its WAN port. We're going to get more into that when we get to the configuration. We also have Starlink. We did a whole separate video on that. We've been using that for a while, and now we're plugging it into this mix. And you're going to see that that is connected directly to the BR2 also through the other WAN Ethernet port. Also, since we're using that 11-in-1 Great Pyrenees antenna, and that puts our Wi-Fi antennas on the roof, we're installing 2 access points inside the RV for better coverage in the RV. One of those is right here for coverage inside. We also have one that is in the ductwork in the bedroom all the way in the front, just like we had in our 397. And that helps us connect to the internet going down the road in the truck. Last up for equipment that's up here is our Netgear 8-port switch. Just a pretty standard Ethernet switch that we can use to plug into our NAS, which is our network attached storage. We plug our computers into it, so we have a wired connection to our router, and it basically serves as the internet backbone for our wired LAN here. Also, it does power the 2 access points I just talked about using power over Ethernet, so that's another benefit of it. So that's all the hardware, all of which is completely useless without a data plan, or data plans is the whole point of this, right? Data plans are the hardest part of building a mobile internet system, bar none. Hardware is easy. Yeah, it costs money and it can get expensive, but you can buy the hardware anytime you want. The data plans are a different story, and sometimes you have to jump on them when they're available. And, you know, the whole video could be done about data plans, and in fact, it has. So I'm going to link a couple of those below. Our partners at Mobile Internet Resource Center and Mobile Must have done videos on those. Additionally, the Mobile Internet Resource Center maintains a page of their top picks, and they keep that up to date all the time. So I will refer you to that for what's currently available and how to get them. What we currently have is an AT&T unlimited connection. Now, this is a data plan that is actually from AT&T. It's grandfathered, and it went away in 2018. This data plan is fully unlimited. It has network management at 22 gigabytes. So it does have some limitations, but we've never really seen any. One big point I do want to make about this data plan is it's only $10 a month. Again, I'm sorry it's no longer available, and this might seem like, oh, I'm bragging about my $10 plan. But the reason I am is because I wouldn't have this plan if it weren't for the fact that I was a mobile internet aficionado member of the Mobile Internet Resource Center when this plan was going away. I got a notification from them saying, hey, if you're thinking about getting an unlimited internet plan, jump on it now. I immediately drove to AT&T and bought the plan with a hotspot, and I've had it ever since. I have calculated that over the years, the Mobile Internet Resource Center has saved me $8,000, assuming I would be paying like $150 a month for an AT&T plan. So thank you, Mobile Internet Resource Center. The next data plan that we have is T-Mobile, and we have that through Mobile Must Have. That particular plan is unthrottled in any way, but it is limited to 800 gigabytes a month. Because we spread our data across these plans, that has been fine for us, but it is something to know. As of the time of this, when I was researching, that's pretty much the max that's available right now on T-Mobile. The last cellular plan we have is Verizon, and we have that service through a third-party data broker called Easy Mobile Data. Now, you're going to see some things and hear some things about these third-party data brokers. You may have seen some recent information out there about Nomad Internet and how stuff just went away. And that is, you know, a risk and a problem with third-party data brokers. We've had our plan for about 3 years with no problems, so we feel pretty good about it. But I will link a video down below that Chris and Cherie from the Mobile Internet Resource Center just recently put out, all about third-party data brokers, so I won't go into it. I will refer you to that video, link down below. Our last internet connection or data plan isn't cellular, but it is Starlink. Right up there. And we did a full video on that before, and I would go into some details on that, but they'll probably change next week. So I'm not going to go into all of that. I'll have some links below, but Starlink is great when it's great, and sometimes it's not. So it's one of those things that it can depend on your location and also on, you know, what might be out there to block the satellites like trees. but that's also in the mix. So let's jump into the installation and how I installed and wired some of this stuff. First off is coming from the top down, we'll talk about the antenna because that involves drilling holes in the roof and that can be kind of scary. I decided to go a little bit easier route this time. I saw a video from Mobile Must Have where he was putting his antenna on a 12 by 12 by 6 junction box, and I just copied that and it is great. It allows me to put the antenna right on top of that box, and then the box itself can serve as sort of a container for the excess cabling. Because I put it directly above our tech cabinet here, I do have some extra slack in the cabling. Now, Mobile Must Have, thankfully, at least offers a solution on this antenna that does have a shorter cable. I started out by drilling a pilot hole here in the tech cabinet through the roof where I wanted it to go. Then I just used a hole saw to open it up to about yay big. I believe it was about 1.25 1.5 hole. And from there, I used the drill bit extension and drilled my hole through the roof from the bottom up. That way I know it lines up with my hole in the bottom. Also, one little tip there is you want to keep your drill speed up nice and high. If you don't, that drill bit can snag the TPO rubber roof and pull it and tear it if it's not going fast enough. So keep that speed up. Get that drill bit through there as a pilot hole, and then all I did was go on the roof with the hole saw and use that pilot hole to cut the hole saw down. Super easy. Once I got all the holes drilled, it's a pretty easy process to basically fasten that junction box down using 8 wood screws. I put concentric circles of non-self-leveling, just regular sealant under there. I also put some sealant into those screw holes. And then I followed up with self-leveling lap sealant all the way around the edge of the thing. Like any lap sealant, you want to keep an eye on it. Over time, it can shrink and crack. You do a roof inspection every 3 months. To protect the cables coming through that little hole there, I did sand down the inside edge of the holes for the box. For the bottom end here, where there's really not a lot of wood or anything to sand an edge off, I actually found a little bit of PVC pipe with a flanged edge that fit that hole perfectly. Just a random thing I found at Lowe's and thought, hey, that might work. I cut it off and I stuck it in there and that works great. So now I don't have any sharp edges meeting my cable as it comes from the roof down into the cabinet here. You also might notice that on top of that box, between the box and the antenna, is a little bit of a shiny surface. That's just a ground plane. When Mobile Must Have sent this gear, they also sent an adhesive ground plane. Even though the Parsec 11-in-1 does not need it, I decided to go ahead and put it down. It's not big enough really for a fully effective ground plane. It might help a little, but it certainly can't hurt. For power to all the devices up here, I prefer to just use standard outlet plug 120 volt AC and connect everything through a UPS. A UPS is basically a battery. It's an uninterruptible power supply. That way, if we have fluctuations in power, power goes out, these devices are all getting clean power. Now to that end, I also wanted an outlet up here. So I did do that. I'm not going to have that in this video. It's kind of separate, but I will have that in a future project montage video. For the mounting of the equipment up here, I played around with some different configurations and everything, but I realized that I wanted the heavier pieces like the BR2 and the BR1 to be mounted to the exterior wall here because it's got the most meat to put a wood screw into. And that's all I did. I just screwed those into the walls. I did mount them low enough that I can put blade antennas on the BR2 if I decide to disconnect that antenna or have a problem with that antenna for some reason. So I left room up there. The BR1 is going to have blade antennas as its primary antenna, so that of course is fine, but it's smaller and a little bit lower. Another tip is before I connected any of these, I got pictures of the top and bottom of them in place. Because later on, you'll be trying to peek up over there and figure out where your SIM cards go, which connections are for which antenna. That way you have a picture for it as reference. I mounted the Netgear switch to this side right over here. I used command strips initially, but after a couple of days, the heat from the Netgear made those things fall off. So I replaced it with two-sided Gorilla Tape and it's staying up pretty good now. You can probably see right here, I have that AP1AX light just mounted on the front of the cabinet. You know, the back of that thing is a little bit strange. It's got some protrusions that make it, I think, a little bit difficult to mount this using, you know, adhesive tapes or things like that. And the mount that it comes with, I wasn't really crazy about, but mounting it right there lets that little protrusion stick between those bars and that works great. I just have that mounted with command strips also. We'll see if that holds up. If not, I'll replace it with some Gorilla Tape. So the antenna is installed and connected, the gear's all mounted up. Now it's just a matter of wiring it all together. I prefer to make my own Ethernet cables so I can make them the exact length that I want. It's not difficult, but it can be a little bit tedious. It's not something that I'm going to cover in this video because you can go down some rabbit holes there like I tend to do. But I'll have some links down below to some good videos that I found. I will say that I wire in T568B. If you don't know what that is, there's a couple of different ways you can wire those 8 connections in the RJ45. I use T568B. Also, I really like the RJ45 connections with the pass-through, so you can put your wires straight through there and not worry about their links, and then cut and crimp them all together. I really like those. And the first thing I wanted to wire up was the Starlink. I've really been looking forward to this because I've been wanting something a little bit more elegant than having to set the thing up every time and run a cable in through our garage door here and across to the cabinet. And it was just kind of ugly and a mess. So if you're not familiar, the connections on a Starlink system are all proprietary. The connections to the antenna, to the router, they're all kind of their own thing. However, the cable connecting them all together is Ethernet. So if you're familiar with the Ethernet stuff I just talked about and making your own RJ45 connectors, you can do that. You can cut that cable. It was a little scary at first, cutting my cable and hoping I didn't have to order a new one, hoping all the things I read online were true. But I found a waterproof pass-through connector and I put it on the junction box up there. It was a little bit difficult because the Starlink cable is made for outdoors and it's got a couple extra layers, so it's a little bit thick. So I took some work to get that thing on there, but now I've got a waterproof connector on the junction box up there. So all I have to do to set up Starlink now is put the antenna on the roof wherever is appropriate. That's one reason I kind of like having the antenna by itself and not permanently mounted, is that I can put it on the front of the RV, I could put it on the back, I could put it out in the yard. You know, as you get into different locations, you might want that flexibility. But as far as connecting it now, I just pop the little thing up, plug the connection in, and it's done. Everything else is permanently setting up here and there's nothing else to do for it. Next up was wiring up the inside access points here. Of course, this one right here, the AX light, is super simple. It's only going from there to there because it's getting wired directly into the switch. But the other access point that we want in the bedroom, I decided to do just like we did last time because it worked great in the 397 for years. And that is using our AC ducting as both a wire run and a place to put the access point. But like I had in the 397, it was a little bit of a difficult process. I wouldn't say difficult, it was time consuming because trying to get that fish tape from the bedroom all the way to here, it gets snagged on everything. So I ended up pulling down our vents. I ended up taking apart the center and rear AC bottom ends so I could get to those vents and basically feed it through. Once I did that, it wasn't a big deal, just pulling the Ethernet cable through, making the connection on the other end and plugging it in. And I just have that access point sitting up in the ductwork up there, and it's close enough that it reaches the truck. Both of those access points are wired directly into the Netgear switch. They don't have to be connected directly to the Peplink, even though they could be. The reason I have them connected to the switch is because the Peplink doesn't supply power over Ethernet, and if I connected them directly to it, I would have to find a power source for these. But why do that when I can use PoE, power over Ethernet, and just mount the Ethernet and be done with it? So that's what I did. As long as those access points are on the same network, the same backbone LAN as the Peplink, it can see and manage them with no problems. But one little side note on these access points, if you're not able to hardwire them using Ethernet like I did, they do support a mesh network. Mesh network is basically extending your network using wireless instead of wired. And to do that would be a little bit more complicated, and I haven't done it, so I can't really go into it. But it's really not that complicated. I just wanted you to know that it's available. Of course, I also ran Ethernet from the BR2 to the BR1 using the WAN port, and also from the BR2 to the Starlink Ethernet adapter, so that way everything up here is fully wired. The only other thing I hardwired was our computers. I ran Ethernet to both of our desks. You can probably see the wire right here. So that connects to both my desk over here and Tara's desk. And we use those so we can have a wired connection to our network attached storage. So now that everything is connected, powered, plugged in, good to go, it's time to power it on and configure it. Now, like other parts of this video that could warrant their own video, this is one of those things. There's no way that I can really cover all the configure options and configuration nuances that might come with this sort of thing. But I will say that the setup is really pretty simple. Additionally, if you purchase from Mobile Must Have, one of the options you can add on there is an instructor-led setup. Highly recommend that if you're not familiar with this. I will also link some videos down below that Mobile Must Have has done on configuring some of these items in more detail, but I want to cover a couple of them and some really cool features at a high level. I'll have a little bit more about Mobile Must Have and our discount code at the end of the video. One of the main things I want to show you, and a really cool new feature that Peplink has put out in version 8.3 of their firmware, is called Synergy. Now remember how I told you I have the WAN port from the BR2 connected to the BR1? That WAN connection is enough all by itself to kind of bring that BR1 into the dashboard of the BR2. However, it's just going to say WAN. I'm not going to know what's actually in that BR1. I'm not going to be able to manage the cellular connection. I'm not going to be able to see signal strength. I'm not going to be able to change cellular plans if I want to switch SIM cards. All of that would be a mystery as far as what I could see from the BR2. Additionally, none of those individual connections would be available for features in the BR2 for things like speed fusion and all that bonding coolness. If I wanted to be able to see that level of detail, I would have to log into the BR1 directly, see all that stuff, and then go back to the BR2. And that's okay. That's, perfectly fine for a lot of situations. However, with Synergy now, it's completely changed it up. And what that thing does is it actually takes those WAN resources in my BR1 and pulls them into my BR2 dashboard as if they were native to that piece of hardware. Now in our setup, we've got our BR2, which is our main guy controlling our BR1. So one of them is a Synergy controller and the other one is just a Synergy device. Setting it up is really super simple. It's just a matter of factory resetting the BR1, plugging it in, enabling that feature on the BR2, and it pops up no problem. Now I say, ooh, that took about a minute. Very interesting. I'll have a link to a video by Mobile Must Have on how to configure this, soup to nuts. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. I will have a link down below to the list of all of the Synergy compatible Peplink devices. Also, super easy to configure and set up in very much the same fashion are these access points, both the one here and the one in the bedroom. As long as they are factory default, if not, you can just reset them. But as long as they are factory default and they plug into the same network as the controller device, which is going to be my BR2, it can see, manage, and configure them just by clicking a box. It's super simple. And that basically allows me to just work on my BR2. I can configure security IDs, SSIDs, I can add different networks, and those get propagated to these automatically. I don't have to do anything. The next cool thing that I want to cover is speed fusion. Now, I know I've covered this in our last video, so I won't go into a lot of detail. I'll link that down below, but I do want to talk about a couple of new features that come with Speed Fusion. And just a brief description of what Speed Fusion is. I talked about these 4 active connections we have up here, right? AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Starlink, they're all active. As it stands without Speed Fusion, the Peplink router will manage those connections just fine. It will, if AT&T goes away, it'll take it out of the mix, and it will kind of balance your traffic across all 3 of those. However, you're always going to be using just one connection at a time for any given connection you have. And that's fine for a lot of situations, but Peplink has a technology in their routers called Speed Fusion. And this used to be a little bit complex to set up, but now it is drop dead simple. It's just a few clicks. Also, there are some new features that I'll tell you about in a second. But what it basically does is it will let you sort of aggregate that bandwidth across all of your active connections into one virtual connection, one virtual private network. It is technically a VPN. It's a fancy one that goes across multiple connections, but it's still a virtual private network. And this bonding or aggregation can manifest itself in a couple of ways. The simplest of which is sort of an aggregation of all the bandwidth. So if I've got 10, 10, 10, and 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I've got 4 10 megabit connections, instead of just using one 10 megabit connection at a time, it can aggregate those into a 40 megabit connection. Almost. You're going to use some of that bandwidth as overhead for managing the connection, but generally you can aggregate those. The other thing you can do with that bonded aggregate Speed Fusion connection is turn on a thing called WAN smoothing. And this WAN smoothing has varying levels from low, medium, high. I think there's actually 5 or 6 levels in there. But the idea there is some of your data, actually all of your data, will go down multiple paths. So that way, if one of them drops out completely and you're on some sort of really important thing, like maybe you're downloading a large file and you're at the very end and then your connection drops. Well, on a standard connection, you might just be done, depending on if you can restart that connection. But with Speed Fusion combined with WAN smoothing, that connection won't drop, it'll keep going. That's a great option if you need a connection that is rock solid. We use it when we do our live streams for YouTube. People use it for remote desktop connections that have to be critical, voice over IP calls. There are a lot of reasons that you could do that. Now, the other really, really cool thing that Peplink did with version 8.3 is it's free. Yes, you heard me. Speed Fusion is now free. Sort of. The free version of the Speed Fusion connection is limited to 10 megabits per second. And that you might say, oh, that's not usable. But really, if you're going to use Speed Fusion, most people are going to use it specifically for certain applications that need it. You can set that up in Speed Fusion. You can say only use it for Zoom, Dropbox, etc. You can get in there and configure rules so that only certain traffic goes over this tunnel and the rest just goes out like normal connections. So that is really cool. They didn't have any free tier at all prior to 8.3. Now, if you do need faster speed, if you're going to be using this for file transfers or things like that, you can pay for bandwidth just like you could in the previous version. And I completely understand that. It's not like, this is something free for Peplink to do. They've got to maintain a data center and servers, and they've got to pay for bandwidth. So I'm really actually pretty amazed that they have a free tier at all. So bravo to you guys at Peplink, because that's really, really cool. So I can kind of hear what you're saying now. That's all really, really cool, Chad, but your setup is absolutely ridiculous. What can we actually use? What do you recommend? And so I'm going to start from the top down and kind of go from there. And so that would start us out with the BR2 Pro. That is a high-end option. It's got dual active cellular modems, 3 WAN ports, so that's definitely at the top end. I'm not going to recommend anything that's not 5G at this point. I mean, 5G is so prevalent now. I just personally I wouldn't buy an LTE or 4G device right now, simply because you're going to probably want to replace it in a year. So that BR2 is probably my top end recommended pick, and you can buy that and just use the blade antennas, add the antenna later, add Starlink later. But if you know you're going to want multiple cellular connections active simultaneously, I'd recommend the BR2 Pro. Stepping down from the BR2, if you don't need dual active cellular connections simultaneously and can get away with one, the BR1 Pro 5G is a great option. It's still 5G. You're still going to have the option of adding a cellular antenna on the roof, just like this one has. It would be a 7-in-1 versus an 11-in-1. Its drawbacks are it doesn't have a USB port like the BR2 does, but that's okay. You still have one WAN port. So you can use that one WAN port to connect to something like Starlink. I think that is a really good option for a good chunk of people out there. The BR1 Pro with some sort of cellular connection, T-Mobile is great right now. Along with Starlink, you can still use Speed Fusion, the free tier on that for critical applications, and that's a really good pick in my opinion. Stepping down from that, getting out of the cellular embedded modem realm, if you just want to do some real basic internet things like browsing the web, doing some streaming, a hotspot might be your simplest option. Our first network setup was all hotspots. We had AT&T and Verizon, and we would swap them out, we'd put them in the windows, and we would do this and that. And that's a perfectly reasonable way to go. The upside to that is you do have an internet connection that you can leave in your RV when you go away. So if you're using something like a Ring alarm system or a Govee monitor for temperatures or something like that, it stays with the RV. The drawbacks to hotspots, at least in my experience, is the Wi-Fi on them is not great. We would have to reboot ours once or twice a day sometimes. Maybe they've gotten better, but that's just how they were when we used them. I mean, they're a little device, they don't have big antennas. And that's one of the other drawbacks of a hotspot is you can, on some of them, connect a 2x2 MIMO connection antenna like in the window, but you're not going to have as great a reception or speed with those. but they work great in a lot of situations. If you're looking for those, Mobile Must Have doesn't carry those, but you can find them at some of the third-party sellers. You can also, of course, just go to AT&T and Verizon and buy one. The only drawback to that is when you buy it from the carrier, you're going to get the carrier's data plan, and that might be fine depending what the plan is, depending how much data you might need, but usually they're pretty restrictive. So the third-party sellers are a little bit better way to go, but then you have, the risk of the third party maybe just going away. But, it is what it is. Easy Mobile Data, the company through which we have our Verizon plan for several years, has been pretty solid. So my current recommendation is that. Like any of our videos, particularly these tech videos, if any of this information changes, look in the description, look in the pinned comment down below, look on our blog. We'll put any updates that we have to stuff like this will go down there. So before you act on any of this, check down below. Last up on our step down through the tiers of recommendations of what you can do for mobile internet is this guy right here. Just a simple cell phone with a data plan that allows you to share it out as a hotspot. A lot of people do that. Now that is very limited and basic. You're going to, of course, probably take your phone with you when you leave the RV, so you're going to lose internet in here. It's also difficult to share amongst multiple devices sometimes, so that is really just kind of the bare bones minimum, and then of course going up from there. If you're interested in any of these cellular embedded options like the BR1 or the BR2 and the antennas and all that, our partner in all this is Mobile Must Have. They've been our partner in the mobile internet space since 2020 when we did our second internet video, and they're really awesome. If you're not sure what you want or what you need, you can schedule a consultation with them. I will have a link down below to a form you can fill out to schedule that with them. If you're not familiar and you want to chat with somebody about what might be right for your situation, that is a great way to go. Additionally, they have a partnership with the Mobile Internet Resource Center, so if you're thinking about joining that, you might want to take a look at the Mobile Must Have plans because they can save you a little bit on your purchase. Speaking of saving on your purchase, if you use our code Changing Lanes at checkout, you can get 5% off, and that 5% discount will stack on top of any other discounts you might get from, say, your Mobile Must Have membership along with your MIRC membership. So be sure to look at those details before you actually click buy. If you have any questions about all this crazy internet stuff that I've covered, put them in the comments down below. I do try to answer all of those. Of course, if you're a channel member, you do get priority and I will be answering those first. But put the comments down below and I will try to get to those. If you got some value out of this video, please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. We've got some cool projects coming in the near future for things like water filtration and power management, power protection, and a bunch of other stuff and random things like that plug that I told you about. So subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.